So this is a three-part series on humiliation rituals and spiritual abuse, and this is the third part of the series where I'm going to be talking about how to protect yourself against humiliation rituals. So if you haven't watched the first two videos in the series, go ahead and do so. When you think about humiliation rituals, they are done so often in spiritually abusive environments. And it's not just spiritually abusive environments too. In families that are unhealthy, they're done. They happen quite often, and especially something that I began noticing as I've been interacting with people around this issue of spiritual abuse is that humiliation rituals are done often and they're very hard to detect. And so because of that, it's vital that you understand what they look like and how you can defend yourself against them. Part of the reason why humiliation rituals are so effective, especially in spiritually abusive environments, is that the people that engage in these rituals are counting on the fact that you value niceness as much as they do, right? And so a lot of people who are predatory love churches and spiritual environments because there's this expectation that everybody has to be nice, right? If you are mean to somebody at work, you'll probably get in less trouble for that than you would if you were mean to somebody at church, right? At work, people are there to do their jobs and go home. But in spiritual environments, you are expected to be nice. And really, what I mean by nice, I'm not using it in a positive way. I'm using it as a way to distinguish the lack of autonomy that people are expected to have in spiritual environments. And so, the spiritually abusive environment is counting on you being nice. This is why people who are predatory love going to churches because, imagine somebody imagine a con artist that wants to borrow money from people, right? And even though they have a lot of money themselves, they're pretending to not have money and want to get money from other people. Are they going to go into someone's place of work and ask for money? No, because there's probably security there and they'll be told to leave. That's not going to happen at a church, right? People are going to listen. People are going to feel bad. Even though they may not want to give that person money, they don't want to look like a mean person in church. And so people are counting on that. Spiritually abusive people are counting on you wanting to appear nice. And that's how they can do that humiliation ritual on you. You've heard about people who have walked out of their workplaces before, right? But maybe you don't hear people doing that so often in church environments. And so, in a church or spiritual environments, or religious environments. And so, these places are counting on you being nice. And so, you have to understand that because they're counting on that, they're fairly confident that their ritual on you is going to work. They're counting on you not speaking up for yourself, not wanting to look mean or unhinged, and just sitting there and taking it. And so that's where you get the one up because you have to divorce yourself from this idea of being nice and looking nice, maintaining this identity of a nice person. Really, these environments, when they talk about people being nice, what they mean is you do what we want you to do, and you don't exercise any autonomy or independence or agency of your own. And so when you go into these spiritual environments, the first thing that you want to do is divorce yourself from this idea of being a nice person and instead assert that you are going to go there and protect yourself because you are worthy and you deserve to be protected, no matter what anybody else tells you. Okay. So that's the first thing you absolutely need to do. It's non-negotiable. And so when you are in a situation where you feel like a humiliation ritual is about to happen, you leave. You don't accept whatever meeting that's going to happen or whatever it is. And so think about a situation maybe where I brought up a few of them. So let's say there's something like prayer, right? And somebody is praying for you and they are using that as a way to humiliate you. You can let them know you can stop them. You can say something along the lines like, I don't feel comfortable with where this prayer is going. And just, speak up for yourself. I know that's hard. It's a lot easier said than done, but at the same time, it's not impossible. And so think about your right to interrupt something. Another thing you can do is ask questions. So the first thing, interrupt. If something's happening, interrupt, right? I don't not feel comfortable with this, whatever. And if necessary, remove yourself from the situation. The second thing is you want to ask questions. Sometimes these places count on you not asking questions. And the reason they do this is because in spiritually abusive environments, they value compliance, they value trust and respect. But when they talk about trust and respect, remember, it's not really trust and respect. They're just code words to tell you do what we say. And so people who ask questions and ask the right types of questions are often shamed for doing so. Well, why would you ask us that? Why don't you trust us? We can't tell you everything. These cliches that are meant to silence you and dismiss you. And so the next time someone says they want to have a meeting with you, always ask what the meeting is about. I'd like to know what the meeting is about. I'd like to know who's going to be there. I want to know how long the meeting is going to last, and I want an agenda. Okay, so you want to know the topic of the meeting, you want to know the attendance, who's going to be there, you want to know what you're going to be talking about, you want to know how long it is. Because sometimes people, as a form of intimidation in these humiliation rituals, they'll make the meeting go on longer than it needs to be. Maybe they said 30 minutes, and 2 hours later, they are still going on. That is to assert dominance over you. And so the way you deal with that is that you have those things and preferably get it in writing. So they could be like, oh, it's only going to be for half an hour after this and this. Okay, cool. Send me an email about it, or you confirm with them via email and say, from what we talked about today, this meeting is going to involve this, 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 and that. And that way you have a record of it. And make sure that it's what the meeting is supposed to be. If it's supposed to be for 15 minutes, then make sure it's for 15 minutes. And the reason you do this is because the fact that you're asking questions is going to tell them that you're not down to play any, games of manipulation, and they might backtrack for something like that. And so it's important that you do that, okay? And then another thing you want to do as well is that you can also just say no. I strongly advise against ever going into any meeting in an impromptu manner, no matter where it is. I don't think that they're a good idea. Now, I understand, of course, there are exceptions. If there's some kind of emergency or some sort of crisis happen, yeah, sure. But from my own personal experience and the experiences of other people, usually when people want to just, pull you aside for a minute to talk about something, you're walking into a trap and you really want to be careful. And so if someone's like, oh, can we meet for 5 minutes? No, I can't meet. I'm not available then. How about we schedule it for this time? Email me or whatever. And watch how they react, because that will also tell you something too. If they get really upset with you about that, that's something to pay attention to. I remember once upon a time, there was a person that I worked with who was not a kind person. They had some pretty, I would say, unsavory aspects about their personality. They were very controlling. And so I remember one time I was out and about and they saw me in the hallway and they're like, oh, can we meet real quick? And I said, I have to go. And then they got really up. They were just kept pushing it. It's only going to take 5 minutes, it's only going to take 2 minutes. The number of minutes for the meeting kept dwindling. And it was really interesting that they were really upset. And I said, I'm not meeting with you. I have someplace I need to be. And so then they sent, some sort of email after with what they wanted. And what they wanted was not something that was even appropriate for them to ask of me. And so they were hoping that by ambushing me and saying, oh, can I talk to you real quick? Um, they could they could get me to agree to whatever thing it was. And so, and actually, I think I'm going to do a video on this about how to use that to your advantage. But So anyway, that's for another day. But my point in talking about that is, don't do that. Just do whatever you need to do to get out of it. Another thing that I would like for you to remember is that you can walk out at any time. When people do these humiliation rituals on people, they expect for you to stay there. And so you can either just leave and excuse yourself, or you can disappear for a while, right? There have been times where I have seen some things that, that's another thing I want to remind you guys of too, is to use your intuition. You have intuition for a reason, and people have shared how they have had a sense about them, a sense in their gut that I shouldn't be at that meeting. I shouldn't have said I'm going to go. And so, gosh, I just lost my train of thought. I guess my point in saying that is you feel free to excuse yourself or to leave if you feel like things are going in a way that you don't like. You don't have to stick around for anybody to abuse you or treat you poorly. And so, again, these rituals, these humiliation rituals are effective because people count on you not leaving. They count on you to stay there. And listen, when I say they count on you not leaving, being stuck in that response is not anything to be ashamed of. So sometimes, people have talked about how they were in a meeting, they were completely blindsided, and they just felt like all the wind go out of them and they just felt frozen. And that is a natural response to fear. And so I don't want you to look back on that and judge yourself. However, I do want you to be prepared that things like that can happen. They can happen anytime and anywhere. And so you need to give yourself the right to leave. So you don't have to announce you're leaving. You can just leave. You don't have to ask permission. You can just leave. And that's what I want you to exercise that right to do. Um, it is, and I can go over, probably some more specific ways to handle this, but I just want you to remember that you can leave temporarily, you can just leave the meeting and not come back. Okay. So I would like to hear from you all about how you've dealt with things. And another thing I was going to say too, back to agendas, is that if there's a particular agenda for a meeting and you were told you'd be talking about A, B, C, and D, and now something else is coming up and you sense manipulation, you can call them out on it. You can say, oh, I have this email here and you said that we were going to be talking about these things. Oh, well, actually, we're not going to be talking about that. And then you could say, I don't feel comfortable with that. I thought this is what we were going to be here to discuss. And you can bring that up to them, right? And so the point of all of this is that I want you to understand that you have rights, you have agency, you have the right to remove yourself from any of these situations. And the way that you do that, first of all, by not getting into them in the first place. And you do that by preparing. So by asking questions, not accepting stuff at the last minute. And you can do some last minute stuff yourself too. Let's say you agree to go to a meeting and you don't have a good feeling about it. You can cancel. You can just not show up. These may seem unconventional, but you have to remember that spiritual abuse is dangerous. And so if you're in a situation where you feel like you could be harmed emotionally or harmed in any other way, you have every right to protect yourself. And that right supersedes convention. Okay. So you have to use nuance and judgment with all of that. I can't go over every single thing and every exception to the rule, but you will know. So I hope that information helps. I'd love to hear from you in the comments about how you've managed these sorts of situations. And I will see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.